pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the absence of Dave tonight, I turn the meeting over to Shannon.
Thanks. Thank you. Hi, everybody. There's nobody signed up for public participation?
Nobody signed up before.
Okay. Is anybody here for public participation? Please come up and state your name and address. Hi.
Teresa Oliar, 133 Old Castle Drive. Interestingly, when I went to look at the agenda today, I see that it's testing results and stuff like that. So I have an interesting thing to tell you that goes against testing. But in June, something kind of awesome happened, which was I attended Massive graduation. And at graduation, there was a speaker, and I actually don't know his name because I only started recording his speech after he started.
Colin.
His name is Colin. And this was a kid that got chosen by writing a speech, and it's chosen by a committee. And I just asked Mr. Swenson, and he told me I can't give him credit because they've done it for a long time. So maybe it could be Mr. Cobbs as principal before, but somebody awesome came up with this. Valedictorian speak, top students speak. This kid could also be a top student, but that's not why he was chosen. He was chosen because he wrote something that was inspirational and then was chosen. And I listened to it, and I feel nobody could ever be too old to take advice from a kid. And I recorded it so I could show my other teenagers and make them listen to this inspirational speech. And then I went out and did what he said, which was to try 3 things. One that's something you've always wanted to do but haven't, something that's a little harder, and then something that scares the crap out of you. He didn't use that word. And do that. And I really took it to heart. And so I tried kayaking. I kind of skipped the middle because I have no patience. And then I had the opportunity to try out for a sport that I had wanted to do my entire life but was too scared. And it's completely outside my comfort zone and was going to take me away from my kids and all the reasons not to do it. And I did it, and it's like been awesome. And I'm doing something for myself that I always wanted to do and then just never had the time. And so I wanted to say thank you because I feel like that speaks to Monroe. It's not just about tests. It's not just about who the highest scoring kid is. There's inspiration everywhere, just like with STEM being a lottery and not just top elementary grades getting in. Kids can find success in so many different ways. And so I just wanted to say thank you and thank everybody who's always a part of hiring our Monroe educators and showing our kids that they can show up in different ways and we can think outside the box. And that was pretty much it. I've been waiting since June to say, like, it was such an awesome experience. It was the first time I attended Massive graduation. And so I look forward to hearing all the other speeches from the other kids.
They are our teachers. The kids are our teachers, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
and it's like, it's what Teresa's referring to is somebody just writes, there's like a contest to be able to do a
Correct,
speech at the graduation, right? And
Yep,
it's just
that-
kind of like if your speech gets selected.
I'd love to take credit for it, but it was before me too. John Batista started it.
Did you start that?
Yeah. He's not around anymore, so I started it. No, yeah, every senior has a chance to submit a speech, and we usually get a good number of them every year. And it's really difficult to pick, but yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's always fun.
Okay, is there anybody else here for public participation? No, okay, then we will move on. Report of the chairman is next, and Dave is in DC with his daughter looking at colleges, so there is no report of the chairman tonight. So we will move on to
Consent agenda.
the consent agenda? Okay. Okay, so does anybody have any questions on the minutes? Okay, does anybody have any questions on the warrants? No, okay. And then, so Joe, you want to do the
Sure,
retirements?
yes, yeah, we had 2 teachers put in for retirement. Monica Brooks at Fawn Hollow, special education teacher at Fawn Hollow, and Pete Schmidt, physics teacher at Massac. I had the great pleasure of working very closely with Pete for a number of years, and I've had a great pleasure of spending a lot of time in Fawn Hollow the past few years. I evaluate a few of the teachers over there, and I've gotten to know Monica really well. So I wish them both. They are going to both be really big shoes to fill. A couple of great educators. So congratulations to them.
All right, great. Congratulations to them. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Jerry, do I have a second?
Second.
Dennis, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. So now it's time for the reports of the committees, and we will start with the student reps.
Good evening, Board of Ed. We hope you're having a magical Monday. Starting off with sports, last Friday, Massac Panthers won a thriller versus Bunnell with a field goal by Jackson Zillick and a final score of 31-28. This past Thursday, girls volleyball defeated Bethel 3-0, and in the least recent, last Wednesday, field hockey defeated Bethel 3-1.
It's Spirit Week. Today in school, we had Safari Day. Students dressed as their favorite safari animals, rocked khaki vests and binoculars. Tomorrow we will have Barbecue Dads versus Soccer Moms Day, as well as the annual bonfire and golf ball drop. Wednesday is Color Wars for all grades. Thursday is Theme Day by Grade Day. And Friday, students will wear Massac colors. And to close the week, on Saturday, there will be the homecoming dance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other committee reports? Okay, then we will move on. Report of the superintendent.
Ryan, you want to just walk us through the fund statement and the budget transfer?
Nothing too exciting going on at this point, just a couple of things I wanted to mention. In the stipends, 751,250, you're going to see a negative amount year to date. That's just because at this point there is an offset in the stipend account for the student surcharges for athletics, so that's just exceeded the year-to-date stipends paid out. I don't know if Jen had covered this last week, so or 2 weeks ago, I'll mention it now. Tuition public is showing a negative or over budget $705,000. That's just the excess cost reimbursement has not been received or recorded yet. And then in the officials account, it's the same as the stipends. There's an offset in there for gate receipts, offsets the officials' expenditures. So that's why that's a negative year to date so far. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on the operating budget.
No questions? Okay.
Makes sense. And then the second item is a small budget transfer for the athletic department that you'll be asked to vote on later. Just put it to the page here. It's a $1,000 transfer from football equipment to girls swimming equipment
We'll be voting on
at the
that.
request of the athletic director. Yes.
At the request of the athletic director? Okay. Do you have anything
Okay.
else in your?
That's all? Yeah,
That's it for you?
Yep.
Okay. So do you want to introduce the presentation?
absolutely. While I'm transitioning, maybe the elementary folks can kind of make their way up to the table. So Teresa gave us a nice intro to the data presentation. It is one piece. It's a snapshot. It's definitely not the be all and end all of everything we are. We have a lot of things to be proud about for sure, and there's areas for us to work on. But our kids are much more than tests, that's for sure. So the biggest thing we got this year from our assessment outcomes from the end of last year is a baseline. We haven't had testing in, the last time we did regular testing was 2018-19. Remember, 1920 we left early. 2021 there was some testing, but I have to say it was very unreliable, not very helpful. The state tried to disaggregate it into kids who are in school full-time as opposed to kids who are out of school full-time, kids who are hybrid. We had asked all of the kids if they were going to take the test to come in to take the test, so they didn't take it at home. So kids who were home all year may have come in to take the test, and it was commingled with kids that were in school full-time. So it was very, very unreliable data. This, like I said, this gives us a baseline. there's a lot of specific information in your booklets. Our folks tonight are going to give you kind of the helicopter view, looking at the same test data that we've been looked at in the past. SBAC in grades 3 through 8, next generation science standards, 5, 8, and 11, Jim? It's 5, 8, and 11. SAT, AP, and then the one that I think is always the most important is the senior class profile from last year. So what I'm going to ask is I'm going to ask each of the principals to just, not each of the principals, actually Kelly's going to do speaking for the elementary folks. What I've asked is each of the principals to come with, at the elementary level, with our ELA coordinators, Kim Nelly and Roseanne Otten, our middle school and high school principals, Julia Strong and Steve Swenson, will come up with the instructional leaders in math, science, and English, Kevin Welch, Corey Evans, and Jim Stozel, and they'll give a brief overview of the principals will give a brief overview of the data, and then I think more importantly, our ELA coordinators and our instructional leaders are going to talk about what do we do with this data. That's the important thing. What do we do next? And one of the things that we always want to keep in mind here is we want to have a growth mindset. If we're doing things well, we want to continue to do them well, improve on them, and in areas where we're not doing as well as we'd like to do, we're going to address that and take it head on. So with that being said, I'll just give you a quick composite view. So one of the nice things that the state does is it gives us a composite for the SBAC, grades 3 through 8, a composite ranking of how we're doing. On the positive side, our ELA scores are really good. You see that for a composite for grades 3 through 8, we're ranked second in our DERG. So again, growth mindset. Let's continue to do those things well and expand on them. The area that we knew coming into this year that was going to be a challenge for everybody, and not surprisingly, was math. And if you look in here, with no exceptions to that, this is going to be our area of focus this year. We know that our kids struggle with math, and if you think about what math entails us to do. Math is very cumulative. It's very everything builds on another, and to have 3 years of disruptions makes that really difficult. But even with that, we want to see this improve. And to that end, a lot of our teacher goals, especially at the elementary schools, are based around math. This is the reason why we hired the high intervention math specialist last year. So our teachers have developed their goals around this area. This will be kind of a recurring theme as we go throughout the night is looking at math. So that's my quick helicopter view of the 3 through 8 composite scores. I'm going to turn it over now to Kelly and our ELA coordinator. So one thing I would suggest is if you have questions, let's ask them during the presentation. We'll have time at the end too for any overarching questions. But if you have any questions when the elementary folks are done, feel free to ask them. Same thing with the middle school and the high school folks. I think it'll just make it a little bit more interactive instead of just listen to us the whole time. Yeah. Okay. Push the one to the right.
Okay. We didn't practice the clicker. All right. Good evening, everyone.
Is this a benchmark now?
So at the elementary level, truly, we really are very proud of these scores. If you take a look across English language arts or math or science, you'll see that most students in every single grade level are achieving goals. That's a level 3 or 4. And that's great news. We are the top third, certainly, in the state scores in all of the areas, and in many cases, we are the top half of the DERG, so that's really good. Something we're used to seeing is that our math scores are slightly lower than our ELA scores. That's truly how we presented pre-pandemic too. Those are definitely a little bit lower scores than we're used to, but we're keeping in mind that the third grade group there, their first and only normal year of school is when they were in kindergarten, right? They were first graders when we went home. Fourth graders were in second grade, we went home. Fifth graders were in third grade. So considering the way instruction was impacted and changed over time, this is really good news for us. As Joe said, we are certainly keeping a growth mindset. So we're just looking at this data as this is our new baseline, and we're going to move our students going forward. And we're going to turn it over to the coordinators now. I'm going to start with Kim Nelly, our ELA coordinator, who will talk to us about what we're going to do next.
Thank you. Oh, you can hear me just fine.
And I did the clicker.
Oh, you have the clicker. Okay, so for ELA growth strategies, as Kelly said, we are proud of our students and how they performed on the SBAC, which as we know is one measure of their success. So building strong students in grades 3 through 5 starts with a strong foundation in kindergarten through 2nd grade. So in terms of curriculum, I want to highlight some additional resources and screenings that we're using at the lower elementary levels for our foundational skills. So first, the Heggerty Phonemic Awareness is a resource that we're using in the core classroom. Phonemic awareness is when you manipulate sounds and words. So if you're rhyming or you're blending or you're segmenting and sounds, and those skills are a precursor to reading and a precursor then to the strong reading scores you see in grades 3 through 5. So since those skills are so important, we are building those skills across all classrooms, kindergarten through 2nd grade. In addition, teachers have increased access to decodable books, which is a resource that they can use with our students. Those controlled texts have specific phonics elements that then reinforce what they're learning through that core curriculum, and teachers can use that to practice specific skills with students. In terms of foundational screenings, in addition to our letter sound identification screenings, we are also conducting phonemic and phonological awareness screenings and phonics screenings in lower elementary, and we're doing that because the combination of those core classroom lessons and the screenings give teachers information on student growth, and it informs both that core classroom instruction and that small group instruction from the teachers. In terms of instruction, our classroom teachers are really looking forward to and getting back to those small groups. That was something that was tricky to do with spacing and masks, and it was tricky to pull kids into those small groups to use that effective research-based strategy. So we're now able to use those again, and we can use them for skills groups or strategy groups. Those small groups happen right there in that core instructional time, or they can happen during the what you need now time or that small group time at each building. And then through those small groups, teachers are able to see a wide range of readers and writers each day, and they're able to provide that prevention, intervention, and extension through those groups right there in the core classroom or in those WIN groups. In terms of interventions, we are continuing to train special education and reading teachers in specific research-based intervention programs, such as the Sunday System, Wilson Reading, or in Gillingham, and that's to diversify the available specific reading interventions for all students. So together, we expect those ELA growth strategies will meet the needs of all of our learners in K-5 English Language Arts. These strategies and the ones highlighted in your book. For math and science, we turn to Roseanne Houghton, our K-5 math science coordinator.
I just have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned like phonemic awareness, the coding. What about fluency?
Yes, that too. Yes.
Okay.
I just, in highlighting a couple of strategies. Yes. So you mean as a screener or as instruction?
Both.
Yes. So we are able to screen. So, and we'll be talking more later, but as you know, like the K3 screening, we need to screen for all the areas. So the phonics, phonological awareness, vocabulary, fluency, comprehension, rapid automatic naming, and such.
Okay, so you use rapid naming with the younger kids. And...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Oh. No. Thank you.
You'll hear, I think Kim touched on it too. Sometimes we say things, I think you talked a little bit about tier 1, and so a lot of times we talk about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 instruction. Tier 1 instruction is for the whole class.
Right.
Whereas tier 2 instruction is sometimes for a targeted group of students that can make extra help in a group. And tier 3 is that really significant one-on-one intervention with the student. So if you ever see tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, that's what we're talking about. So we'll talk a little bit tonight about different interventions, and they kind of fall in those different tiers. Tier 1 though is what can we do for all kids? You guys are laughing at each other. Did you say? I didn't make that.
Well, I changed it to say core classroom instead of tier 1, so that just so it was clear. But that's okay. You were expecting me to say it, but well, because we were highlighting what we're doing across all classrooms for all students, and then down to the intervention.
Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll start with the math growth strategies. In the area of math instruction, the current state and district data for elementary classrooms helped us identify the instructional focus this year of communicating our mathematical thinking through problem solving, student application of strategies, and student conversation or student discourse. Conversation improves engagement and invites all students to the learning, creating an accessible entry for all our learners. In addition to the collaborative math conversations, Students are working with hands-on manipulatives again this year. We're happy about that. And are learning to make their thinking visible through paper and pencil tasks, using mathematical notebooks and whiteboards, for example. And all of this provides teachers with authentic evidence of student learning. So again, our areas of focus for instruction are student discourse, using mathematical strategies, and making their thinking visible. In the area of intervention, we're grateful to provide one intervention tutor at each of the elementary schools this year. They support small groups of students within the core classroom, as well as they can also work with targeted supports with students. Teachers utilize multiple data points, both summative and formative, to design the student groups and inform next steps of the mathematical needs. We're looking closely to build number sense and solid foundational mathematical understanding that will continue to build forward with each grade level. In our curriculum resources, we make sure they are aligned to state standards in order to structure optimal kindergarten through grade 5 outcomes. We are also looking with emphasis on math language, lesson structure, math strategies, and we're looking to see consistency across schools and grade levels this year. We're using smarter balanced interim assessments in grades 3 through 5 as teaching tools more than individual assessment items to familiarize students with not only the content as delivered through a digital format, but with language, tech tools, and question formats, ultimately instilling confidence in each student as they engage in spring assessment cycles. In addition, this year, we're using a Connecticut State recommended math resource that will provide a vertically aligned kindergarten through grade 8 math experience, with the goal of setting students up for a smooth transition from grade 5 to grade 6 math. So thank you. That's our math thought. And we'll move on to science. For science, our science curriculum focuses on aligning next generation science standards with reading, analyzing, and critiquing data. This is very important in the next generation science standards, and we've been working on this for a few years. Classroom instruction provides a mix of hands-on investigations, technology experiences, engineering design, and collaborative problem solving. We're happy that students are able to use hands-on materials more in the classroom this year, and we've provided supplies to all elementary classrooms, K-5, for that purpose. When we support student learning, we're looking at multiple data points. Again, formative assessments that can center on science and engineering practices. In grades K2, we learn to observe and record like scientists, and in grades 3-5, we use claims, evidence, and reasoning when analyzing data and forming conclusions. The Next Generation Science Standards interim assessments from the state of Connecticut are used as teaching tools, similar to the use of IABs in math, which provides teachers with meaningful information about student success with science content on our state technology platform, ultimately preparing them for state assessments in grade 5. We're looking forward to a year of growth and success for all our students. Thank you.
Any other questions for the elementary folks?
Can we go back to the second slide with the percentages? Is that the second or third slide?
The first one?
Math?
The full one.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this,
Yep.
right? Because in my warped old world, it's, basically a C, C+, maybe, from a percentage standpoint. The other thing that disturbs me, it's going to disturb me with the high school as well, basically. I'm not a big fan on DERG, all right? From the reason of, it's like, people aren't going to stay in Monroe, or do they stay in Fairfield County, right? So you're training these kids for the real world, which is outside of our cold little Connecticut culture, right? So, DERG's one thing. I know you got to have a baseline, got to have metrics, and it's good to make sure that you're outstanding in your local neighborhood. But in my business sense, I guess, it's a comfort zone, right, to have the percentages. And that, in my world, comfort zones are where average people do mediocre things, right? I want us all stretching ourselves, and I know you guys are, and I saw heard how you're going to be doing it. But I really want these guys. I don't want to put the pressure on the teachers and the students any more than we have to, but I want them to be ready for the real world, right? math and reading are critical. So I'm not happy with the numbers. I'm sure I mean, it's comfort because you're okay in the dirt, okay in the state, but, as far as I'm concerned, those are mediocre baselines that we really have to exceed what expectations are. It's just my thought. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but,
What do you mean
it's good.
mediocre baseline?
I'm sorry?
What do you mean by mediocre baseline?
Well, I mean, this is a comfort zone, right? That we're at 76% or, top 25%, or it's comfortable numbers. And in comfort is a stagnation in my mind. If you're comfortable, you're very at ease, and it leads to, in my world, in businesses that I've had, it leads to, mediocre results. I want people stretching themselves to do better along the walk with all the scores that we have, which are decent, yeah? We're good in our state, we're good in our DERG, right? But we need more, because the kids aren't gonna stay here, right? And they gotta be able to compete in the real world. So I wanna make sure that we're exceeding expectations across the board with all the things that we're training them. And now, I'm not trying to put undue stress on everybody. I know we've had enough stressful years, and I saw the numbers from 19 to 22, and it's a little disturbing. I'm sure it's disturbing to you guys, and I'm sure we're gonna get there. But, just a caveat. I mean, I just, need us to stretch, and I guess you are by following the state statutes and stuff. But, I just, want to be able to support you guys as much as possible so we can have our kids stretch themselves as well, because I've seen so many kids who cannot use their fingers for math, let alone a calculator, right? And it's just disturbing as they go out into the real world. So, kudos for what you're doing. I don't want to, dismiss that. I think, we're doing a good job. I just want to kind of make us stretch.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Dennis. I just don't know how else I don't know how they can show that.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. It's all in the actions that you're talking about, what you're doing, right? And following the new curriculums and doing things that the state, those means to get there. But clearly, you're doing your best with the tools you have. But I just, both my parents were teachers, so anything less than an A just wasn't acceptable. So you bear with me a bit, but I think we're doing a good job. But I think we need, especially in these areas, math and English are paramount. Obviously, science, coming from a techno world, I feel that's pretty high. But
yeah, I mean, I understand the DERG. I think when I'm looking, I don't know if we're going to dig into these numbers specifically later, but one of the things that I'm seeing is some schools did figure it out specific to math, right? So I understand the benchmark there, but when we look at some of the other school districts that, while math typically fell, and I'm looking at 4th, 5th, and 6th grade specifically, as well as 3rd, but there were some schools that actually excelled and improved. Do we have any idea in terms of what they did to essentially improve their scores or stay relative, as opposed to us that dropped 15, 16, and 19 points looking at 4th, 5th, and 6th grade?
Are those the tools you're expressing that we're using now? Are those the tools that they used? Do we know?
Well, this is during the COVID period, though, right?
Right,
so
right.
Because that's the baseline we have. We have 19 to 22, so they obviously did something to keep their kids up to par, so that when they tested in 22, they performed at a better level than us. But they kept some of their numbers relatively intact. So I'm curious to see, what did these school districts do differently than what Monroe did that kept them performing while Monroe fell?
I think we can only guess, right? Because there's so many
Right.
different factors at play between how often was that school district in remote instruction versus how often we were. Lower Fairfield County saw a lot more COVID cases than perhaps other counties in our DERG. Some of them may have more consistent curriculums, K-8, whereas we are lacking in that area and we're looking to add that. So I just think it's really too hard to pinpoint one factor, or, were they doing small group work even though maybe their state recommendations wasn't to do small group work? Were they using manipulatives even though that wasn't the recommendation? Were we, following things a little bit more strictly COVID-wise, and did we not put a lot of pressure on our teachers for instruction, because we know that students can be successful even if they didn't pass the 3rd grade math SBAC score? So I think we kind of took the approach last year as, we want our kids to be socially and emotionally healthy, and we want our teachers to be the same, and we didn't focus a lot on the test. The test was something we did because we had to, and I think it's just a baseline going forward. So we put our eggs in a different basket, I would say.
So, I mean, along what lines what Justin was saying, was there any communication with any of these top performing schools? I know I brought this up last year, because last year our math numbers were there was room for improvement. It was my understanding that they're going to contact some of the higher performing schools in our DIRG. Has that ever been done?
We've done that. We met with, one of the ones that made it, more so at the middle school level, but one of the ones that, that had done pretty well in 18, 19, really. And we started having conversations with them was Cheshire. We talked to them about some of the, unpacking some of the assessments and, really checking to make sure that the assessments that we're giving, are they targeting the standards in an appropriate way.
Joe, to turn this around a little bit too, and I know money's not always the answer, but I'm so happy you guys brought it up. Just remember in a month, when we're sitting crunching numbers and breaking our heads, I don't want to hear, oh gee, there's a cap we have to keep. We need money to do it. And I know money's not always the answer. But if we go to Cheshire, hold on a minute, Dan, let me talk. If we go to the performing school systems and listen to what Kelly just said about having individual instruction and everything else, I know money's not always the answer, but it helps. And so just remember a month from now, when I call you on it.
I know, Jerry, I have the suit on, but that doesn't mean it's all money. It's like,
I
show me the
like
plan
money.
of what you need, and we will go and address it. That's the goal. I mean, it's all about the kids and the teachers, right? And you're right, we were very concerned, still concerned about the stress level that was on everybody. But you're right, this is for performance, right? We got kids going to the real world, and we have to make sure. And if it's budget, then we deal with it budget-wise. If it's staff, we deal with what we need to deal with, right? It's too important not to. I'm not committing to Jerry's budget because that'll be fictitious. But for the rest of us in the real world, we'll address the real
world
concerns.
says you have to have the parts to build the machine. All I'm saying, you set the foundation. I'm so happy you opened your mouth there because I need the parts to build the car, or I can't build the car.
Okay, but I don't want to Hyundai with Jaguar parts. All right, so let's
I got it.
get what you need,
happy
just find
to-
what you
I'm
need,
just-
and if it's going outside the box of what the state recommends, then let's see what we have to do to get where we need to be. Right? So let's hear it. Right?
And I think,
Thanks.
look, I think the main point that I was getting at, Kelly, and I appreciate the points you made there, is that everything that's happened over the last 3 years, we can't allow it to just disappear, right? We have to learn from it. And so what did these school districts do so that if, God forbid, we have to deal with something like we just dealt with, we have ways to deal with it that we know will maintain the success of our children? Because I think, when I see numbers dipping 15, 16, and 19 points, that's a significant variation from where we were. And then I see school districts that maintain. So I think it's important for us to learn and understand what that is so that we can be more prepared for that next time.
Right, and when you
That's-
look at it in relationship to a state or DIRG, and your percentages drop and everybody's percentages drop, it's like, well, let's not thrive for mediocrity. I mean, let's get above that, right? Let's not worry about, concern ourselves with the numbers as to comparative to others. Let's get beyond that. That's the concern. So,
I know my opinion might not be the most popular one, but Joe said before you guys started presenting that our students are so much more than tests, and they are. And I know we need a unit of measurement for a thing of comparison. I know that there has to be some sort of a ruler to measure it. But I'm speaking for myself. I'm not a fan of standardized tests, and I know our students are so much more than that. And this is like one snapshot in a test setting. And it's not really indicative of the students in the real world and what they're capable of. It's just, it has its limitations it's not the end all and be all, in my opinion, at all. And I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the hard work of everything that goes into all of it. But, I'm more of a fan of the whole picture of the students and what they're doing and everything. And
Shannon, I totally agree with you. I think the data is anecdotal, it's directional, right? When you see significant drops in the data, that's where the red alarm goes off, right? So I agree with you 100%. Standardized testing is what it is, but when you see numbers drop that significantly, then something happened and we need to make sure that we understand it, right? So I agree with you.
Hey, Joe, is there any way to get data that, I mean, I know that these things change, but this is it's a 4-year subset, so is there any way to get testing pre this so we can see an actual trend line as opposed to this window? You know what I'm saying? So test results going back further so that we can actually compare. I mean, because this might not be as bad as we, or it could be.
No, it's a big gap. 19 to 22 is a big gap.
Right, but if we have data going back further, then we can put this more into perspective, I think.
Yeah, we can definitely look at that. if I remember correctly, the 18-19 data, just because I did the data presentation, was really was pretty powerful. I think all of our cohorts had gone up in every cohort, and we had gone up from grade to grade.
Well, that's why I remember, that's why I bring it up. I just would like to see it more, you know, 'cause COVID, I don't, you know, we don't know what to do with it because of, it was such a, you know, oddity. It would just be helpful to have a larger subset of data.
I just want to reemphasize that. To me, this is not gloom and doom. There's definitely areas, I think, like I said right from the get-go, I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. Math, I think, is an area we need to, you know, and I still want us to do well, but I think a lot of districts would kill for, you know, some of the stuff we've done, especially in ELA.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think the key was in the details, right? And everybody's saying what we're doing, how we're doing it now, because you're looking at the same data. So you do have a benchmark, and it's good to look at and progress from. It's all the actions you're taking are going to make the difference. So, you know, no, nice presentation. I didn't mean to be doom and gloom, so, you know.
And just to build on Shannon's point, I think Teresa opening with the kids learn, we learn from kids, and something I heard from my colleagues was that, you know, we're able to have discourse now between students, small groups between students, manipulatives, hands-on experiences. They're able to collaborate and learn from each other, which is something that over the course of time has been lacking. So I love that she opens that way, because that's something that I think we're all excited about, having, you know, these experiences for our kids that have been lacking, and that's why we highlighted those as our next steps. So
I agree with you, but all the towns were in the same boat.
Sure, I agree.
It wasn't just Monroe that didn't have that, it was all these.
Remember that book that we read with Jim Agostine? What was it called? The
Finish lessons.
Finish lessons. Yeah, where they.
Yeah.
So I mean, there could be leaps and bounds of progress that aren't being measured in standardized tests. So, yeah, they have their limitations.
One measure, one step. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We have Julia, Kevin, Corey, and Jim. Come on.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. Hi. So the Jockey Hollow team was busy this summer. We were doing the same analysis on the Smarter Balance for English and Math and the Next Generation for Science. And we did find accomplishments in every discipline, and we also found some areas of focus that are going to guide us for this year. We're actually already guiding us, and for beyond. So on the left there is our ELA scores, and the first thing that jumped out was the consistency from, you know, going back even before COVID. We have a strong percentage of students who met or exceeded goal on the assessment, and that is our usual in Monroe. It shows relative retention from our kids in the essential skills of reading and writing throughout the period of remote learning. On the right is our math test results. As Joe mentioned, we're not using 2021 as our baseline, but these numbers didn't really feel like Monroe to us either. Dennis, if you were looking for some people to be uncomfortable with their
I'm
numbers,
looking at 'em.
you found those people. Here we are.
kind of looked at the faces, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we spent some time making a roadmap, and we're going to talk to you about that tonight. We actually were already doing that, and it was not, you know, this chart that spurred us forward. It was our students' need coming back out of the pandemic. And we knew, going back to last year, that we had some kids who needed more time with a certified teacher for more instruction coming out of the pandemic. As you all know, kids came through the pandemic with different amounts of need and different retention of the skills for math specifically, and for all the disciplines. In the middle school in Monroe, one thing we don't have, you know, you're asking the question about other districts, we don't have those certified math teachers that are, you know, intervention based, that don't have their own classes, that are just there to give additional instruction. So we knew we had to find the time for that. We developed the PAUSE, flexible instructional period, at the middle school. It's modeled on the same thing as Flex at the high school. This was last year, 21, 22. And it's, you know, 30 minutes flexible time every day so that the teachers can pull their own students in doing that analysis. So our math teachers at the middle school, we don't have the luxury of the certified math interventionist where you just say this kid needs more math and schedule them for another teacher. We had to do it with our own classes. And so last year, you know, in the midst of this data that does not look good to us, if you look at that 7th grade number, you know, that's almost 63% of students who met or exceeded goal. But in our pilot group in 7th grade, the teachers who made, we call them foundational groups, they identified kids with specific skill weaknesses. These were the kids coming out of the pandemic with the least retention. And the teachers that piloted this, I'm just going to get this number for you, it was 73% of those students from that pilot cohort who met or exceeded goal. So 10% higher. And that was already in place last year, based on our students' need. So, you know, we did make the roadmap. We don't think there's a magic one thing to do, but a whole bunch of different you know, things to address. And we are on it. In the other cohort that did this, we had 70% of students in these foundational groups move a level, like from a 1 to a 2, 2 to a 3, 3 to a 4, which really exceeds the growth target that traditionally we would set for ourselves with that. So clearly math is a focus for us this year. We already were on it with some small results, but you know, Kevin's going to talk a little bit about our work to scale up those tiny promising things to be school-wide, so that we don't look at those numbers again next year.
Before you move on, Julie, real quick, so within those cohorts, what was the total universe within each of those cohorts? Is it 73% you had mentioned, essentially, versus the 62.9, right? Like what was the total number of people in those cohorts?
So the kids who had, the teacher who used her own student caseload in this pilot group, she has 75 students. Okay. So among those 75 students that experienced this sort of foundational grouping cohort, you know, they exceeded by 10 percentage points what our overall average was. Right. And in the other cohort, that teacher had that teacher did that work with 120. I don't know if it was all 125. So just over 100 students who had that exceeded the growth target of 70%.
Yeah, so a significant pool. So that's what I was wondering is you know, because obviously that's the impact, right? If it's 73% of 10 kids, that's one thing, but if it's 73% of a big number, then it's more impactful.
No, it wasn't 7.5 kids. It was a good job. Yeah, it really was. But we would like to not have to do math on that and tell you it was all the kids. Yeah, right. So we'll be scaling that up. But you know, for us, we changed our bell schedule. We did all this work, and this is what Monroe does. We get all we can out of what we have, and we use sort of Yankee ingenuity to do it. And that pause period was how we got our own classroom teachers to be able to do this work. Yep. You know, the Jaguar parts of that would be, it'd be very nice to have people who are dedicated to do that in math, like we have for LA. So then the bottom of the slide is our science results from this past year.
Make a pregnant pause there because Jerry was making faces at me.
Jerry, the point you should have heard, they're doing it now.
I just wanted to ask you a question, but that's nice that I was making face at you. So how many, I know you don't know the answer. In our ERG, how many have that dedicated math specialist?
I really want to tell you that exact number. Can I come back and tell you that?
I would like you to, yes.
I want you to know.
I want to build up as much ammo as I can, so yes, please do.
So Julie, how many math interventionists do you have at Jockey Hollow?
We have
certified math interventionists.
We have three non-certified tutors who are hourly people.
So I'm talking about certified.
Zero.
Oh gosh, we don't have any, Alan. No.
So that's kind of.
And the three of them are they're not full time too. They're 4 days. Like Jockey Hollow, they split. So each of them come 4 days a week. So one will come Monday through Thursday, the other comes Tuesday through Friday, just so they have enough hours in the day to be there in the beginning of the day and then end when the school ends.
What are they certified in now?
Well, one's a guidance counselor who actually just left us to take a job as a guidance counselor. Another one was working on a science certification. And the third one is and over in STEM here, is a certified math teacher that left teaching to raise kids and wanted to get back in, so she applied for the position over at STEM as our interventionist.
And we're very lucky with who they are. You know, they are really wonderful, but the position is not for a certified math educator.
How many LA interventionists do you have? Because you had mentioned those.
You know, I can't speak for all the schools, but at Jockey Hollow, for 765 students, we have 2 certified, 2.0 FTE for certified ELA intervention.
And they're certified.
Right, they're certified teachers, but they don't have, you know, they don't teach like 5 classes of 25 kids. They are specifically working in small groups, direct instruction and reading, and when a language arts teacher has a student who, you know, comes with more need than the rest of the class, they can work in partnership with that certified teacher, so that student gets that much additional instruction from a language arts teacher. And in math, you know, you just have to use more creative ways.
So I'm just kind of trying to figure this out. So you have 3 people who weren't certified math interventionists. What were they doing?
They were doing tutoring, math tutoring, but not as a certified teacher.
So they're not certified.
Yeah, they're working with students and in small group or one-to-one. Usually if it's a student having some difficulty in the class, they either go in to support the teacher in the classroom, or they might come out and work with them in a small group in the math lab to work on like some foundational skills to help, you know, that student better, you know, better work in the classroom.
How many like kids were in these groups?
I think about, I want to say like 30 kids. I don't have the exact number. I'm just trying to think of, because I would meet with them on Tuesdays during the pause session to just kind of go through kids and see how they're doing, and every couple of weeks to see if they're showing growth or is there something else that we could do to help support them.
I have a question for you, Heather. There's no doubt, obviously, that the kids' learning was interrupted with COVID and some varying levels of being impacted and stuff like that with the kids and everything, but do the scores that you see on the SBACs mirror what you're seeing in real life with the kids in the day-to-day basis?
Day-to-day, I think I see a better understanding of the mathematics. I think their challenges are making that connection. You know, they might be, because we worked on the skill levels. They lost a lot of skill work over the last couple of years. I was at a state meeting the other day, and the woman who's head of the math for the state said secondary students are at least a year behind in their math skills. So a lot of that was, you know, working on the skill level. I think a lot of times the students have, some students, not all, but have difficulty translating that to some sort of conceptual understanding. Mm-hmm. So when they look at something on the test where it's not just do this problem, but it might be something where they have to pull out the information and go, oh, I need to do this to solve that problem, I think that creates another challenge for them. So we're trying to, in the classroom, work on that piece of it. Well, I'll talk about my intervention piece, but try to work on that so they can get a better conceptual understanding. Because I think that will help them, especially with this type of test, where they could use their toolbox of skills and apply it to a task.
I want to go back quick to what Alan was saying before, because I'm trying to, if there was a resource, whether it was intermittent, right, or whether it was tutors, what's the difference between that versus a certified interventionist? Right, so if you were to measure up the 3 tutors versus the resource, because we're going into budget season, right, just from an understanding perspective, how would that change things?
Yeah, I mean, just from the from what it looks like during instruction, the non-certified tutors are working on extra help to work on what the student is working on class sort of more with them. When you have a certified teacher, that person does a cycle of assessment, instruction, they can do skill building, they provide analysis. You know, in ELA, the interventionist will do reading assessments and design instruction that builds the skills for the students to then, you know, re-engage in the classroom at a higher level. When you're working with the non-certified tutors, based on their training and their background, they need to work completely under the direction of the classroom teacher. So they would be working specifically on homework help, or, you know, one identified skill that the teacher had, pulled out of some classroom assessment or something like that. So it's just, it's great. They're really wonderful and so conscientious with the kids, but it's just in terms of the like how rapidly the kids can make gains with the certified, just looks anything, right? A certified teacher has more expertise to do the instruction, assessment, and curriculum cycle with kids.
Kevin, could you explain the difference between someone being certified in middle school math and someone being certified as a math interventionist?
Well, certified in a teacher that is certified in mathematics went through the teaching program, went through the praxis, and they received their degree as a 712 math-specific certified. They're either major in math or concentrated in mathematics, so they had the mathematical skill all the way up to calculus. So when they come in as a certified math teacher, they have that content knowledge, they have the instruction knowledge, they have the education knowledge, they have all that information. The interventionists aren't, I mean, they're certified, but it's not a certified interventionist piece. If we were to bring in a certified interventionist, we'd still want all that information, all that content knowledge, all that good instruction, because they'll be giving classes of students to work with. They'll be doing, lesson planning and assessing and tracking of data and writing assessments and working with students in either small group, one-to-one, whether it's tier 2, tier 3. So they'd have all that in their toolbox to then work with those kids. The interventionists have now, they're wonderful, they work real hard, they're good with the kids, they work with them, but they don't have that math background. Well, 2 of them don't. The third one does. We're lucky to have her in terms of her math certification to be working with these kids. So I think that's the difference. I hope that answers your question.
I wanted to just finish the data overview with a quick look at science. Is everybody okay to move on to our science data? This is only our second time with quote real data for NGSS. It was brand new right before COVID, and students only take it in 5, 8, and 11. So we had 2/3 of our students meet or exceed the science goal. We felt good about this accomplishment given the impact to hands-on learning that these students experienced. These were our 6th graders who did science labs on a Zoom call in their parents' kitchens. They poured liquids of different densities into your nice glassware, as I remember from watching on Zoom. So good job to the science teachers for this. Today I walked into a science classroom and they were doing that same lab that I remember from a Zoom call a couple years ago. They were doing that lab, but with safety glasses on and pouring the liquids of different densities, making observations in their science notebooks. So the return to hands-on instruction has been really impactful in science. So that's the helicopter view for Jockey Hollow and sort of what's spurring us on this year and going forward. Our secondary instructional leaders have been working a little bit more detailed analysis for you of this data and where we're going with it. And Corey, do you want to go first? You want to talk ELA a little bit?
Sure,
This
yes,
is
I'd love
Corey
to.
Evans.
Hi, good
ELA.
evening, everyone. First, I'm really enjoying being in Monroe, so ultimately, thank you for hiring me. That said, being new to the district, I've spent a lot of time acclimating myself to what's happening at Jockey Hollow in STEM and the English department. I'm seeing some really great engagement. I'm seeing lots of student choice. The Reader's Workshop model seems to be working quite well, as evidenced by our in-house assessments and also our standardized assessments, as you just saw. We're adding a writing focus this year to align with Julia's vision of the graduate communication goal, because ultimately more reading and writing means better and stronger reading and writing. With regard to pause, we've been finding that students' writing abilities do vary quite significantly. So we are pulling students into those individual sessions for the flexible instructional time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. I'll speak to the math gross. It's okay.
Sorry, I forgot to introduce Kevin Welch. Kevin Welch, everybody.
I'm Kevin Welch. I'm a math instructional leader and her mentor, so obviously I got some work to do. I want to talk about the math growth strategies. Like the elementary school too, we're looking at 3 pieces. We're looking at curriculum, we're looking at instruction, and as well as intervention. I actually want to speak to instruction first. We're focusing on math communication this year, and when we came to math communication, one thing, if you look at the SBAC, one of the sub-scores is called math communication. It's also one of our competencies on the vision of the graduate for communication is. And really what we're looking for is for kids to have conversations in the classroom, not just about what the answer is to the math problem, but also the process in which they got to that answer. I think when you look at a lot of these questions, I've heard a little bit before, it speaks to the student's understanding of the process. And really what that looks like is really peer-to-peer conversations in the classroom, teacher-student conversations, really breaking down the task they're working on, and not just really coming up with the answer X equals this, but really this is the process that I was thinking of to get to that answer. One of the purchases we made this year were vertical whiteboards. They're about 2 by 3 that we're hopefully getting mounted around the classroom. And this comes from actually a book that Mike Crowley made me read. But it's a great book, and I love it because it talks about the visualization of the classroom and how students can walk around the room using it as a demonstration model. So you could have a group of kids or a couple kids get up and demonstrate their knowledge on this whiteboard and have another one over here. So now you can see multiple ways of solving a problem. Might not necessarily be the same pathway to the end, and they can have kids get feedback and discussion about what they see. So I had a couple of teachers very interested in it. I said, whatever it takes, I'll buy it for you. And let's see if we can get that, because it really gets those kids really having the mathematical conversations that we're looking for in the classroom. Because I really feel like that helps them make that connection between the skill and then the task at hand when they're asked. So that's really, in terms of instruction, what we're looking for. In terms of intervention, and Julia mentioned before, we have this great pause session during the day at Jockey Hollow where teachers are working with these kids. And what they're doing is they're putting together foundational groups based on the data collected, whether it's on the SBAC or the interim assessments or the STAR data, which we gave at the test that we gave at the beginning of the year, or other classroom measures that they're seeing. And they're pulling with these kids to work with them in smaller groups. And this is what we started seeing last year. We talked about the 7th grade and what we saw coming from them in terms of really sitting down, and we do this in our department meetings. We have conversations about kids and conversations about instruction, and really start looking at pulling these groups together so that they can work with these kids and really get to what they need in terms of their skill work. And also, in addition to that, work on making that connections to the mathematics. We really, we liked what we saw, especially in grade 7, and I think the data shows it where it's, and again, it's a moment in time, but you saw a nice jump in percentage of students in terms of their not only reaching 3 and 4 on the SBAC, but also showing growth from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. So what we want to do is we're going to put all those strategies through 6 through 8. I had the 7th grade teachers talk about what they did in our department meeting. We're looking to have, again, use that pause time to really help support these kids so that, they could get a better understanding as we go throughout the year in terms of the curriculum that they're doing. Which leads me to curriculum. And we're looking at a new resource. Again, Roseanne mentioned earlier that they're looking at it K-5. We're also looking at the same resource 6-8 because we want that consistent vocabulary and communication and strategies to go K-8. We've always had one resource K-5 and another one 6-8 for years. We used Big Ideas. Big Ideas at the time didn't have a K-8 program. But we're really looking at this resource as one that really help support these kids and fall under a lot of the lines of what we're looking to do in instruction and intervention. To answer your question before, I actually did talk to 4 schools so far. I spoke to Wilton, I spoke to Madison, I spoke to Woodland and Trumbull. 3 of the 4 use this resource now, presently, that we're looking to use. And it would just, just kind of get an idea of what the teachers think about it, how's it work in the class, because it's new to them too. Where we looked at it, we figured, let's not jump in the middle of a pandemic to start a new curriculum. Some of them had it before, and so that, gave them kind of a little head start on this. And this is a Connecticut State approved curriculum. So it definitely 3 of the 4, and they've seen nice results using it. Now, there are other things. Speaking of Wilton, they pulled out all their statistics and made it a separate class. So now the students taking a Math 6, Math 7, Math 8 class, they're also taking a statistics that they rotate in with the other, they call STRIDE, but it's their art, their music, their tech ed, and their prob and stats, which I thought was interesting because that's always, the prob and stats is what we struggle to get to. And, in this day and age, statistics is becoming more and more important in mathematics, which I thought that was interesting. They do have interventionists at the elementary and middle school level. Madison, I thought was interesting because they mentioned during the pandemic, they never went home. Like, they went home the initial end of the year, but when we were in hybrid the next year, they kept their kids in the classroom and their teachers rotated, which I thought was interesting. Because if you look at their scores shot up. They were one of my first calls. And I was just interested to see, did they benefit? It was something that I found interesting they did differently when most of the schools were in some sort of hybrid.
So all their kids went to in-person learning every day all
Yes,
year.
and the
That would be
teachers,
good for
the
scores.
teachers would hop in to different classes, so they rotated, not the students.
That would have been good.
Which I thought was interesting.
So being in school is good for kids. Got it.
And I think the other concept was rotating teachers was good for the students too.
Yeah. So, the different subjects. So anyways, I wanted at least to talk about, I know that, 3 of the 4, and again, for curriculum, we're looking at this resource, we feel this is good for kids. It'd give us a nice communication, K through 8, and really help with that transition from 5th to 6th grade. Thanks.
Real quick, you had mentioned the statistics becoming more important, and to Dennis's point around like the real world thing, I know, Joe, if I recall, we started putting like a personal finance class or curriculum in there, right? Is that something that we're working on?
There's one. No, there's one.
There is one, right? And what grade is that? That's it.
High school.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm curious, is there something we can do, even at the 8th grade level? Because that's when, they start to, potentially spend money and things like that. So I don't know if it's something at the middle school level. I know my daughter, she spends money, my money. But, I'm just curious if there's something we could do there, right? Because statistics is important, but then, personal finance as well, so, okay.
Like what the developmentally
Yeah,
appropriate for
exactly.
personal finance. Yeah, that's a good one to look into.
I think in high school, isn't there personal finance 1 and 2?
No, it's just marks, right?
It's not a personal finance,
Yeah.
there's a finance and investing.
Oh,
So
okay.
if they say personal finance, then they'll take finance and investing.
And it's always overbooked, right?
Personal finance,
Right.
yeah, it's the most, probably the most popular elective, yeah.
So if we're okay to move on from math intervention plans, then maybe Jim, you could talk about science a little bit at the middle level.
Good evening, everyone. We're excited to be back in the lab doing hands-on activities. For that reason, I intend to make very little curricular changes at all this year. I think we're on the right course as far as what we're doing with the class and having implemented the next generation science standards to be a more constructivist learning model. We continue to focus on skills of a scientist rather than on content knowledge. And I think that also allows the kids to apply those skills to situations they may not have seen when they actually get to the assessment. This year, the whole school goal, vision of the graduate competency of communication fits in nicely with science skills as well, as students collect data, analyze it, and then communicate out their findings. One of the things, after having come back from the same conference Kevin mentioned earlier, the use of interim assessments is one of our priorities this year, more than we've ever done. Schools that seem to have been more successful than others are using those both instructionally and to collect data. And then as a side benefit to also get students acclimated to this online tool that they're using to take the test. We're using pause as well to identify students who need more reinforcement in these scientific skills. Graphing seems to be one of those areas where we're working mostly with kids lately, and we'll continue to do that as well this year.
Any other questions for the middle school folks?
Keep up the good work.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
The kids staying.
That's right. Students stayed, we rotated the teachers. So our PSAT, SAT data, if you look at the chart up there, obviously you can tell it's kind of disjointed data over the last few years where our students didn't really have the same number of opportunities to take either the PSAT, really the PSAT, because they had the opportunity to take the SAT. So it's a little bit disjointed in terms of that. However, in taking a closer look at the class of 22, 23, and 24, those are the students who have taken it, the PSAT multiple times and possibly the SAT. Their growth rate has remained consistent with pre-pandemic numbers. Are there overall numbers where they were pre-pandemic? No, but the growth rate is still there. So we have, again, we have certain things that we need to work on for sure in both ELA and mathematics, but what's important is our students are still growing each time they're taking the assessment. And also, you got to remember, ninth graders, typically, that's the first time they're sitting for a PSAT. It's the first time they're experiencing a test of that nature, et cetera. So, that baseline, et cetera. But the data is a little disjointed for our most recent students, but the growth rate is been consistent. In terms of ELA, Corey?
Hi again. So again, as you know, I'm new to the district, so I've been observing English teachers, obviously getting acquainted with the curriculum here in Monroe and working with teachers to ensure that they're still growing so that our students are still growing. Our scores indicate that things are going quite well with regard to reading, as evidenced by our SAT scores. Similar to our plan at the middle school, we are creating writing benchmarks this year to better align our instruction and our grading and to ensure that we have student models for writing. In addition to that, we're looking at the curriculum this year to ensure that the vision of the graduate competencies are being met in each of our courses. And finally, we're using Flex similarly to the way we use it in PAWS at the middle school, in that we are ensuring individual reading and writing instruction during that time.
So an unfair question, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. So how would you compare us, I know you're still figuring this out, to where you came from? I mean, your last school district, compared, I know, listen, I taught here 35 years, I got it. And I know you're a newbie, but I just want your gut reaction.
I have no reaction. No, I'm joking. There's some phenomenal, the kids here are amazing. So I've been spending some Flex time with them myself because I wanted to get to know them, obviously. I think it's the most important thing I can do. And they're just incredible. They're like the nicest kids ever. So I think that what we're doing well here, like kids come to class and they want to do work for you. They want to. So I think it's our duty to push them to grow because they can and they will. And I mean, kids are kids everywhere, I find. But I don't know, they're a little special here, so.
I didn't mean to set you up.
No, it's okay. Sure, it's okay, it's a good question. No, it's fine.
And the administrative team is wonderful.
These guys are all right, too.
In mathematics, like the middle school, we're focusing on 3 different areas of our curriculum, instruction, and intervention. For the curriculum, we're planning at the high school to do an audit of our math courses at all the levels. Over the last couple of years, we emphasized certain topics and de-emphasized others as we're trying to support the needs of the kids. So we felt this is a good time to take a step back and really see what we're doing in each class, what are the overlaps, where are the holes, take a look at the vertical alignment. So if a kid walks through 4 years of math from algebra to geometry, algebra 2 to pre-calc or advanced math, what does that pathway look like for the 4 years? And I think it sets us up nicely as we're approaching work on the vision of the graduate. So we're really going to take a deep dive into our curriculum and see really what it looks like, not only at the different courses, but also at the different levels. Also, we're continuing to embed SAT-type questions in instruction assessment. They're good questions. They're questions that we could use every day that really exposes the kids to the vocabulary and the type of questions being asked, so that when they get to the actual SAT or PSAT, they have some familiarity with the test itself. We are also, this year, it's going to be online for the first time. From last I heard that they're going to take the SAT online. So we need to work as a group to make sure they have some experience with that as well. I know College Board pushes Khan Academy as their intervention tool to help get kids ready for the SAT. So I want to take a look at Khan Academy and not only just the materials, but how they're asking questions online, so that is this a good tool for kids to practice and see if it's relevant to the College Board test itself. So that's around the curriculum, what we're looking at. In terms of instruction, again, just in middle school, we're working on mathematical communication. My teachers are working hard developing student-centered activities and having kids work together in the classroom, have these nice mathematical conversations. It's a nice complement to their direct instruction that they're using at times. They might go in and introduce a lesson and talk about some of the notes and some of the examples, but giving those students that that time to really work together while the teacher circulates the room, getting some good feedback of what students know and don't know. We think it really would help the students in the classroom with their mathematical understanding, as well as really understanding their feedback. And the third thing, in terms of intervention, we had the flex very much like the pause at the middle school. I walk down the hall and they're packed with kids. It's 30 minutes a day. Kids are coming in to see their teachers, not only just math, but in all subjects, to really kind of get that extra support in a smaller group session with their teachers to help support the classroom itself. So we're going to continue to focus on pulling kids, inviting them, or just also keeping that door open for kids to come in and ask questions, so they can definitely get some support and help for their classroom of mathematics. And with that, I would like to...
hang on. So I sorry, no. I just want to add, part of the audit too is to look at, there's a lot of redundancy in the curriculum. We're covering things 2 or 3 times across a couple of the courses. So rather than cover it so many times, cover less topics but go deeper into it, so that every student is getting the opportunity to not just learn the skill but apply it. Because a lot of the changes in the SAT are taking skills, not just skill-based questions, but understanding, as Kevin said, what skill do I actually need to apply here to successfully navigate the question that's being asked. So it's going deeper into less versus the inch, the mile-long, inch deep. So that's part of that work there. I would like to add too, we have exactly twice as many of Jockey Hollow certified interventionists, 0. So we have 0 math certified interventionists, 0 ELA certified interventionists. We do have 1 math interventionist that just started last week. About a week ago, and we have 1 ELA interventionist not certified.
Is the math person certified?
No. They are working towards...
She's interested in becoming a high school math teacher. Right. Just out of school, and so this she felt was a good way to really get into a school system and learn a curriculum and work with kids.
The position was not for a certified person.
It was not certified.
No.
And we had it posted since September. It was a challenge to find.
It was a challenge to find.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, somebody to take.
It's a little harder when the math gets more complicated.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Jim.
Well, again, I'd like to take a minute to kind of go over our scores from last year. Our results on the Next Generation Science Standards assessment were pretty consistent with pre-pandemic scores. We're right around the middle of the DIRG, upper third of the state. Similar to our plan at the middle school, we focus on transferable skills in the science and engineering practices over content, and that seems to be working well. We know that because on the SAT subscore in science is one of the highest areas on the test for us. This year, the whole school focus on the vision of the graduate competency of communication, just like at the middle school, factors in very well with the goals that we're trying to get in our science classrooms. And from feedback from students on last year's test, again, familiarity with the platform itself for the test seemed to be one of the biggest concerns of students. So increasing the number of the interim assessments that we're doing as a way to get more familiarity is another goal for this year. And like the through line that you've heard all night, we're continuing to use flex time to identify students who need reinforcement or to work on content knowledge in their individual areas. And I met with students working on chemistry again today.
So Massic's AP program, remember AP, it's a program which, students can earn college credit as a result of their performance on the assessments. The courses are run more like college courses, and again, the assessment performance is important. We have continued to increase the number of students taking AP courses over the last few years, which in turn is obviously going to increase the number of tests being taken. So that's a positive. over that. And while increasing the number of students as well as the number of tests being taken, we've also maintained our high performance of passing scores, either maintained it or increased it, again, a positive. Other highlights that are not on this slide but are certainly in your book, we had 100% of passing scores for students in AP Art, AP Biology, AP French, and AP Music Theory. We had over 80% passing scores in both our AP Calcs, A, B, and BC, our English Lang, and our English Lit, our Physics 2, and our AP Spanish, over 80% passing scores. And probably one of the most challenging AP tests, whether it's because it's usually the last one given or the nature of the test itself, because it's not so hard in math, it's more that reasoning and ability to discern what that number means in context. The AP Stat test, we saw over a 40% increase in scores. And I want to remind you, those of you who've been on the board, a couple years ago you approved some new resources for AP Stat, so you don't often get to hear or get that pat on the back for getting it, but the resources definitely led to improvement in that area. The actual assessment, this assessment measures students' speaking proficiency. So again, factor that into the disjointed nature of our last few years. But it's scored on a continuum from novice to advanced. Students who score at the intermediate 3 or higher level qualify to take 3 additional assessments for the seal of biliteracy that they can get on their diploma at graduation. If they then score on those 3 assessments, intermediate 3 or higher, they will get that seal at graduation. So you can see there we did have 13 students pass all tests for the seal of biliteracy. That's down from recent years. Again, I'm just going to stress the disjointed nature of speaking a language via Zoom or trying to speak a language from behind a mask, challenging to say the least. The department is focusing obviously on speaking skills in students as we've returned now to in-person learning every day, without masks.
Great.
Now, all this, right? You've gone through how long have we been talking about data? About an hour, right? So here's where our students, Massac, Monroe, continues to pair our students for their post-secondary plans. If you look at that number, over 93%, chose to continue learning at either a 2 or 4 year vocational program, college, or university. Our students are meeting, they're meeting their goals, and we're helping them get there. And, again, if you can actually read this slide, I'm going to be very impressed. But it's in your book. So this is a testament to the outstanding work that the faculty and staff of Monroe, but obviously of Massac, because I'm talking about the high school, they continue to do to prepare the students with the knowledge and skills to shine and be ready for continuing their learning at many of the most competitive colleges and universities in the country. Dennis, you said earlier, our kids aren't staying in Monroe. They're not. But the good news is they're going to these places, and what we hear from our alumni is they're well prepared to be successful there. And they're being persistent. They're not, going for a year and coming home, most of them. They're being successful at that level. Because we've prepared them for the rigors and challenges of college, because of the learning experiences we've provided here in Monroe. Which means we are doing something, and I would say several things, right for kids.
That's true.
Question?
On that list of schools, have you vetted it by those that don't have SATs anymore, don't require SATs anymore?
I have not. It's a trend where test optional is, especially over the last few years, is increasing, so less and less of these schools are looking at test scores. Again, we educate the whole child, and we look to grow kids in every area, which is again just going to help them achieve their goals. So,
thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Keep up the good work, guys. Everybody.
Yeah, thank you all for the
Joe, do
very
you want this?
informative presentation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like I said, that's just it's a snapshot, but it is an important snapshot. It gives us, like I said, this year it's given us a baseline of where we need to go. We know where there's we're doing well, and we know where there's areas that we got to improve. And I would say, we know that math is an area of focus for us, and you can't tame it if you don't name it. So, we're gonna go after that. I have asked all of the folks that are out there right now. Last year we were really fortunate in that the state gave us this, all of our standardized test scores came back really early. Usually they come back in July, and it's kind of tough because everybody is kind of split for the summer. Everyone's going. Last year, if we get them the same way we got them this past year, we got them before school got out. So I invited all of them. The day after school gets out, I said, please save the date now for whenever that day is, because we're going to have a data retreat to look at it and really grind into the data even further. Because it's a lot easier when you're still in the momentum of doing it. So I know one other piece that we didn't really talk about tonight. Last year at budget time, we talked about tutoring programs for kids, and one of the other things that we're also doing to address a lot of this is giving targeted instruction via those tutoring programs to those kids to try to address any kind of skill deficits that we might see.
No, I think that's good. It was great information, and it was great, a measure to see where we need more work and everything done, but also I liked that we looked at things other than just the standardized test. There's more kids taking AP classes and doing well and passing, I think, at a higher percent of passing the AP tests, and more tests being taken, and it's just nice to look at the whole picture of the child, not just the standardized test. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so we're going to move on the agenda to number 9, old business. Policy second review, vote anticipated. We had a lot of policies. We had an extra 15 minutes in our policy meeting that day, and we came out with 6 policies that we're doing for the second review tonight. Face mask coverings, procedures for bus drivers, really bus accidents, health assessment and immunizations, that was CABE mandated, meeting conduct, non-discrimination, and truancy with the, I believe that was the mental health days, the 2 mental health days. Does anyone have any questions on these? Any of these policies?
Just the only change on the truancy policy, yeah. It says, so just so you understand the difference between chronic absenteeism is all of your absences in a year, and if at any point you're over, I think it's 10% of the days that have been in session, you're considered chronically absent. Now, we've sent out a number of chronic absenteeism letters ready, because if a family has, kid got sick in the month of September, they missed 5 days, they've been out for more than 10% of the year so far. So it's it's skewed early in the year. But the truancy policy it had a mistake in it. I'm just trying to find where there it is.
We have to amend it.
Yeah.
We have to amend it before we vote on it. Go ahead, keep going.
So the amendment should be, it said in there, the calculation of chronic absenteeism rates the calculation of chronic absenteeism rates shall exclude absences resulting from a student taking 2 mental health days per school year. That should have been the calculation of truancy. Truancy is excluded when you're talking about the mental health days, but chronic absenteeism still counts, because that's just the total number of days absent, no matter what the reason. So we just have to substitute truancy for chronic absenteeism rates.
Motion to approve as modified? Can I make a motion to approve with the change?
Yes. Dennis makes a motion to approve the amendment.
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Alan. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, so now we'll be voting on these with the amendment. All right, so any discussion on any of the policies up here on number 9 for old business second review? Do I have a motion to approve the policies as presented? Jerry Stevens, in a second. Christine?
As presented and amended.
Oh, as presented and amended, okay. So Jerry Stevens made the motion, seconded by Christine. All in favor? Okay, great.
Thanks.
And then number 10, new business, also, number 10A is the approval of the budget transfer that Ron had mentioned earlier, that came at the request of the athletic director, correct? Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the budget transfer as discussed?
Motion to approve.
Okay, Dennis made the motion, seconded by Christine. Any discussion? No discussion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay. And then 10B, policies first review. We have 4 of them. Now I'm going to put on my policy hat. Minimum day.
Duty.
Sorry?
Go present. You gonna present them?
Yes. Minimum duty-free lunch periods for teachers. Physical exercise and discipline of students. Sexual abuse prevention and education. And number 4, reporting of child abuse, neglect, and sexual assault. These are just here in the packet for first review tonight. They'll be back on the agenda at our next meeting for a second review with a vote anticipated. But I guess while we're here, is there any questions or discussion on these items? No? Okay, so I think if there's any discussion on anything, then Mr. Stevens?
Motion to, oh wait, do we have to vote? No, we don't have
No,
to
no.
vote on those. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Sure.
No, we're gonna
Justin?
stay.
All in
we're
fa-
staying.
any discussion? No? Okay, all in favor? Okay, great.
Good job.
Good night. Good night.
Nice job.
Good job, Shane.